Basically, the process I'm recommending is this. Here's the grief at the bottom. That's what you eventually will feel. Over the top of the grief is the fear. And over the top of the fear are all of your addictions. And when they don't get met, you get angry. Right? That's the general train of emotion. You've seen me draw that many times before, probably, if you've watched some of the videos. Now, every single time, if you remember this process, you realise that every single time I try to skip over one and go to another, in other words, many of us try to do this. We try to go, I want to get to my grief. And I'm not going to bother about my addictions or my fears. I'm going to get to my grief. And I try to force myself to get to my grief, whatever that grief might be, that I know is present within me. Many of us can feel it. What we're doing is we're not releasing the things that keep that grief under control. And so it's going to be a terrible struggle with a lot of pain. If the way we do it instead is if we're angry, we feel the addiction that drove the anger. In other words, feel the next layer down. Don't try to go to the end. Feel the next layer down. Feel the addiction. So I go, oh yes, this addiction is that I want people to tell me that everything's going good and I'm going great and that's my addiction. Feel that addiction and feel how off it is. Feel how it creates a lot of things in your life. Feel how it manipulates people in order to get you feelings. Feel all of those kind of things. And once you feel it, you won't like it. And then what you'll do is go and say, okay, I want to feel the fear that drives this addiction. And it's the fear that I'm never going to be loved, or the fear that I'm useless or worthless, or the fear, there's all sorts of fears it may be. And then allow yourself to feel those fears and you'll very rapidly get to the grief. But you are not going to get it by trying to skip over everything. All right? Now, when you force yourself, that's what you're doing. You're skipping over the process that God's created for you to release. Remember, this was the layers that were constructed. So the layers have to be deconstructed in the opposite order they were constructed. And for many of us, what we try to do is we skip over the layers we don't like. Now, most men don't like that. So they use all sorts of techniques to skip over that grief. Most women don't like that. So they use all sorts of techniques to get over that, or over their fear. And as a result, we can't get to the bottom of everything. And it takes a much longer time. And in fact, for many people, they just give up as a result, because they feel the pain of not getting through things. And they feel like it's just going on for weeks and then months and then years and then years and years. And after a while, they feel despondent and they give up. My suggestion, if you feel like that, is you need to reverse everything and go back to the basics, which is I'm angry, and that's okay. I'm allowed to feel my anger, but understand that my anger covers my addictions. So there's addictions right now that are not being met that I need to let myself feel about and find out what they are and feel them. Feel how much I want them met. Feel how much I desperately need them. And this is the area where spirits feed us. So a spirit who's unseen person and people on earth feed those, PEA is not a very good spelling of people. People on earth feed these addictions, right? And that's how they get their addictions met, by feeding your addictions. And you go, oh, you're a wonderful person, and then they get their addictions met, right? It's a codependent addiction fest. Right, that's basically what it is. And what we need to do is see that every time we're fed some things that we think are true and we act upon that in our addiction and the end result is not very happy, we need to see that this is what was the beginning. The beginning of it was that we were unwilling to see the addiction in play. And the event now that the event has happened, gives us the ability to see the addiction in play. So I would go back over the life of you asked me a question about your life in the last 6 months and what happened in the last 6 months. I would go back over my life, if it was me looking at your situation, I'd go back over my life and I'd sit down and I'd write down all the addictions that got met when I was initially told these things that I thought were good. Does that make sense? And I would write every one of them down, and I would look at them really seriously about feeling them rather than trying to have somebody come and tell me something and me accept it so readily. There are many people on the planet today that are and in the spirit world, I'm talking about as well, who are completely willing to feed you a heap of bullshit, right? Just a heap of crap, so that they get what they want out of you. That's, in fact, if you think about the world generally, it's pretty much how the world operates, isn't it, almost? And we are so used to accepting it because we want it. That's our problem. And this is where our addictions are so important. So I would suggest to you that this is the area to focus. Not so much on these areas, but this area here. That's the area I would focus on if I was you. And I would look at all the messages that you thought were good that you received over the last 6 months, and I would look at what addictions these particular messages fed. What kind of things that you liked about them. What did you get out of them when you received these particular messages, whether they're from spirits or people on earth, doesn't matter. And let yourself feel about what was driving it inside of yourself. That's what I would do. Yep. If we can go back.